Hey YouTube, welcome to another Escarlesco Capivarano video. Get ready, because what's happening in the United States Championship is something impressive. Neiman is playing over there, trying to get his first national title. Now bang, he faced the youngest grandmaster in history, Mishra. Check out footage of Neiman, who continues to win over the American audience. Here are the images. It happened in a recent match between Neiman and Mishra at the Grand Suisse with a good victory for Hans. Now, what happened in the fifth round of the American Championship is something completely brutal, frightening, out of this world. To what point is chess getting? Because here, Mishra went after Neiman to destroy him. Let's bring in a detail. I'll share the updated American result at the end. But be warned. Sit or you'll fall. During the analysis, hold a baseboard and get your popcorn. Chess is always a battle. Woohoo! With the white pieces, Hans Niemann faces Misha, the youngest twin ever. Hans also says he's new. Bob Fischer couldn't start any other way. Bob Fischer's favorite equatrino. And there it is. He's going to play an Italian opening. Now everything is balanced. You'll notice that the clock will barely run in this opening phase. But quickly, this match will take one of the most chaotic turns of any game I've seen this entire year. This is about to get brutal. Rock. It's a standard move. Now for the clear touch. Neiman responded to the e4 pawn with d3, d6 to open the c8 bishop, and c3 to position the bishop here. Everything at the right time. Also against the idea of knight a5, play the check and come back here. You can't catch the little bishop. Rock, got it? And after the move knight d2 bishop b6, it's a typical idea. Already anticipating the idea of b4 of a4. On this queen's side, Neiman realizes that the theme is to catch the little bishop. He brings back the bishop to watch the c2 square. And now Misha will move this knight to the king's side. Keeping an eye on the f4 square time hasn't run out. They're still within their theories, their technique, and their mastery. Neiman played knight to c4, creating the first imbalances. He wants to take the dark squared bishop. Break the black's bishop pair. There's not much of a way to defend against this idea. Knight to g6 is played. Neiman moves rook to e1, then after rook to e8, bishop to c2. Already looking to the future, the opening, of course, for that king's side flank later on. Neiman's point is he can take that bishop anytime. If you play b4, you have to retreat, so it's not worth it. So c6 was played. Misha argues that he's going to defend the bishop, and Hans said, "No, I'm not here to play around." He took it. And after the recapture, Misha might argue that he's being annoying. After a2 and d4, Neiman played, and the position gradually opened up. b5 brings the idea of maybe breaking the structure at the right moment. He controls the bishop on g4. Misha controls the bishop on g5. And Hans said, "Well, I'm going to defend this here because this rook is about to come into play." Notice that, in fact, the clock didn't run. The moves are very natural. They're normal. No very different ideas have been presented so far. Look at what happens from here on out. Bishop moves to d7, completing minor piece development. Neiman responds similarly with bishop to e3. And after queen to c7, holding the center and preparing rook to d8 here, Neiman moves the knight to d2. Raphael chess. Everything is very calm so far. Notice that Neiman, of course, is concerned about the e4 square. With the capture and the pressure on this central pawn, he defends. And here, the kid went to war. That's the only way to define this move, d5. From this moment on, war is declared in the North American Championship. Look at the contact happening in the center. There's no turning back after a move like that. See that Neiman took on e5, and after queen takes e5, he plays the move bishop d4 here. What is Mishka noticing? His queen is under attack, so he'll defend by moving it to f4. But Neiman is missing some defensive pieces here on the king's side. This could be a theme for the young talent. Notice that from this moment on, the decision Neiman makes here doesn't allow him to go back anymore. He plays the move g3 and completely weakens the king's flank. Of course, it's one of the engine's moves. The idea makes sense, but it's not easy to handle. The white's position. You can see that Mishka brings the queen back to d6. And here there's a collapse, because now there's a strong threat on the e4 square, and the h3 pawn is falling. What is Neiman seeing to save a position like this? Look at the chess Hans is playing, Hans. At this moment, he starts by relieving the pressure. On e4, he also gives up the pair of bishops. Of course, Mishka won't let the structure be broken. He took it back. But now the e4 theme remains and the h3 pawn is falling. Hans, to justify everything he's done so far, plays a completely scary idea, which is the move f4. Notice that he starts advancing the pawns that protect his king. That's what's amazing. Very hard to play. And Mishka, realizing that the White King will become so vulnerable in this position, sacrificed a piece. Raphael Chess, the boy, fell into the trap that Hans wanted. Is he going to sacrifice like that? Why doesn't Mishka just take it? Why does h3 look so good? Because it's not good, it's bad. Move the queen to h5 as Hans suggests. Nudge the bishop, then return it and take e5. The position closes, but white keeps the advantage. You can't move the queen to e6 or you face a bad fork. What if you bring the queen back? In the worst case, I can simply recover the material, but a bunch of pieces are coming after black. So Mishka went into the sharp line that Hans set up, which is knight takes a4. Silence is brilliant and the position is incredible, but it's still balanced. But we're going to get into a very interesting concept about the question of balance in chess. Notice that Mishka is sacrificing a piece. Hans can't refuse and takes it. And after queen f4, the e4 pawn is under attack. The h3 pawn is also falling, and the white king is in shambles. And there's where even a drawing idea that you can get here at the right moment. With the queen attacking the king, Niemann avoids a draw by playing queen e2. Consider this idea. If you start giving checks, he wants to cover these threats at the right time. But Mishka here is going to win another pawn. He takes on e4. After the recapture, this move isn't good. You take the queen on f2, but if you trade queens, I recapture with the knight and defend everything. Niemann has an idea here, but Mishka, he takes another pawn. And it's incredible because at this moment, black is down a piece, but has 3 pawns for the piece. That's the point Mishka is making. And here comes a strange concept in chess, because this position is balanced, but at the same time, it's unbalanced. Raphael Chess, you're going crazy. What you just said doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make much sense in Portuguese, but in chess language, it does. Why? Notice that in this position, the engines mark it as a draw, according to the evaluation of the position. But there is a material imbalance where white has a knight for 3 pawns. It's very difficult to play. So the game is tied, but there is a material imbalance. So it's balanced, but at the same time, there are imbalances. Look, how crazy. Watch how the game unfolds from this moment on. Because Niemann proposes the exchange, saying, I understand that you have 3 pawns for the knight, but let's play this endgame because I'm confident. And the kid called the bluff, he took it. And after the recapture, here comes the move. Rook d8, notice that Mishra has both rooks centralized. The position is not obvious at all, not easy. These pawns are going to start advancing, but Niemann gets into the fine line. Look, this move knight to d6 is the move to keep the position under some control, although it's really crazy. It looks like he's giving it away. You can't take it, or you'll step in it and hang the rook, but the kid traded a pair of rooks after recapturing. It's incredible, but you still can't take it. Otherwise, you'll get checkmated. Look at the bishop on c2 played way back there. And time was already starting to get tight. There's a threat to the pawn at b7. Mishra defended it, so let's see what happens next. It's very confusing. Niemann, at this moment, plays the precise move again. He wants to go into an endgame because if you take, he simply recaptures with the knight. It seems unplayable, yet Mishra chose king to f8. Let's explore this move's depth. You still can't take here or you'll be checkmated and the bishop is hanging, so you have to decide. Here, notice that this exchange is not good. Whenever you check, Niemann can defend the b2 pawn with rook to e2. And here you have a dilemma. Because look, you can never drive the knight away. Otherwise, you stay on h6. If you make this move, you can play rook to d2 and offer the exchange. If you take an I recapture, the endgame is tough since Niemann threatens a fork and capture on c6. No matter how far you move the king, you can't get too far away. Otherwise, you hang this one here and you don't have g6. Otherwise, you hang on h6. You get completely tied up in this position. What did Mishra do? He began bringing the king earlier before it became chaotic over there. Niemann takes on h3 and seems set to win a piece, but the checkmate threat is gone, so the knight is lost. And they're going to play this endgame with a bishop for 3 pawns. Very complicated. Time was running out, which isn't good in such a complex position. And Niemann played again the best move in the position here. Rook to e4 Raphael. But why this move? Does it really create a knot in your head? He's showing that if you play rook to d2, he returns and creates an interesting endgame for white with the bishop. But this move isn't so clear. The kid starts to advance. That's his majority, what he must do, his strategy, and now Niemann's plan. Rook to b4, look at that idea Hans found. totally surprising because it already defends b2 against that check. And here he wants to play c4 and has the idea of also advancing a pawn. That's how white is going to try to seize a position like this. Very creative. King e7 has been played. The kid keeps bringing the king. Centralizing. Now bishop f1, watching the queen side. After f5, black must advance. Now Naman makes his counterplay with c4, trying to open up the queen's side. Rook d4. It's a very subtle move from Misha, saying, you can't take here. Hans didn't take, he played rook b3. Raphael chess, why can't you take? Because you can no longer push a white pawn through here, which is exactly what you want to avoid. Because the exchange comes, you triple the pawns and nothing gets through. After you capture and recapture, you can't push the pawns further. And black is advancing. So this is the scenario that Misha would like to get into. Hans didn't allow it, he played this move, Raphael. But here he gives up the pawn. Exactly, but if you take it b6 falls and Niemann manages to push his pawn, it becomes a brutal endgame. Rook was played, now Niemann plays king e1 keeps the king solid, rook e4 chasing this king, and bishop e2 again. Niemann refuses any draw option by repetition. He covered with the bishop, and now captures here, saying the bishop can't recapture the pawn. Well, here comes the move rook to b6. Niemann manages to achieve the long-term strategic idea he had, which is to push a pawn. Misha had little time, and now the move king to d6 was made to defend c6. And, of course, Han gets out of this pin theme, and now the move a4 is coming. Before Niemann can play that, Misha launched the king's side. Over there, it's a race. Good. Naman now gets active, targeting the h6 and g4 pawns. The potion is scary. Anyone who says otherwise is crazy. Here we go. After move 40, Misha receives an extra half hour and spends 10 minutes on move g4. It's going to get tense again. And here Niemann plays rook to h8. Of course, he's going after that pawn. The kid defended, and here Niemann takes the pawn on c4. Now notice, black has 4 pawns to 2. It's not 3 pawns for the piece anymore, it's 2. And a pawn is advancing quickly. But of course, the bishop threatened. Rook to g6 has been played. And this position is desperate for Hans because there are already 2 pawns here that are very advanced. g3 is coming, f4 is coming. This one is safe too, king to e3. Niemann brings in a defender, and the kid correctly plays f4, the engine's move. Because you can't take here, otherwise you're done for here. In the worst case, white would draw. In the best case for Misha, it would be a win. Niemann declined the pawn. Raphael chess, why not take? Because here you get g3. Here the position is already terrible. The pawn has advanced too far. You'll need to sacrifice the bishop and play the endgame. Good. 4 Niemann keeps the king solid. g3 is played. The king comes to g1, and at this moment, king e5. The king has to come in to support these pawns. Raphael, Niemann seems lost here, but keeps fighting. He plays rook to e8, checking to see your response. The king attacks the bishop, then moves bishop to e2. You can see that Niemann starts trying to regroup to hold back the pawn advance. c5 has been played, advancing the queen's flank, and this is the first moment where the boy didn't threaten anything. Naman played a4 for counterplay, advancing the queen's flank, and now played c4. The mystic makes a good move, appearing to block the bishop's diagonals. Hans moves rook to d8, aiming to move the king from the pawn. The king goes to e3, and Niemann takes another pawn. Raphael, why did the mystic do that? What's the compensation? The compensation is that, for the moment, you're no longer defending the f3 pawn, and now he plays by advancing. There are 2 pawns, 3 squares from promotion. It seems impossible to defend this position as white, but Niemann will find resources where it seems there are none. He starts with rook to d3. Look at that move. Gives a check, you have to move the king away. e4 is played. And now Niemann plays a5, saying if you advance here, I'll keep blocking, you won't promote. Here, the kid plays g2, placing the pawn just 1 square from promotion. Amazing. But this move, which seems so natural, the engine marks it with a question mark. There's no simple way to reach this position, which is already tough. Surprisingly, white is better right now. g2 is a superhuman move, preparing to promote if you take the king away. But then Niemann plays this bomb, which is the move rook to d1. He reinforces the first rank, puts a tactical theme on this king and this rook, and then the move king to e3, threatening nothing less than mate in 10. Why do I play f2? When you move out, I promote and the rook is holding. It looks again like Niemann is lost, but he finds the finesse again. He plays rook e1, and when that king moves out, he plays bishop d5 here, and he's defending 2 pawns on the 6th rank. It's incredible what Hans Niemann is playing. Rook g5 is clearly played here. The kid starts trying to look for counterplay to hold that queen's side, and Niemann played the brilliant, look at this move. Bishop takes f3. It's locked up. Your rook can't leave the 8th rank or you'll get checkmated. Your king is completely trapped, and that pawn is going to fall. h5 was played, and Niemann took the pawn. Now, Rafael. I understand, but how do you win if Niemann can never move the king or else he loses? Why does the promotion happen? Niemann will present the idea. Now Misha begins. Niemann threatened the pawn, held with rook h6, then moved the rook back to protect the g7 pawn. Here's a dilemma. Niemann essentially passes the turn by speaking. You can't move your rook anymore because your pawn would be captured. That's your issue. If you move your rook to b8, I'll check and take your pawn. The boy said, but I can get through with the king. You can, but after moving the king, the rook moves to h2. And again, if your rook leaves the 8th rank, you're facing checkmate threats. Look at this incredible thing that's happening. The king is trapped, and the pawn is falling. Next, king a8 is one of the only moves, and now the g2 pawn falls, and Niemann is 2 pawns up. This game is extraordinary, brilliant play by Niemann. Well, at this moment, rook b8 was played, a desperate move, and of course, Niemann is going to defend. And now rook d8 saying that the king won't get past this rank, and Niemann starts bringing his king. Here it's very clear. He's bringing the king until he manages to get through. He starts to invade, goes up to the pawns. The kid has no move. He advances the king however he can. Niemann here finds the genius plan, the brilliant plan, to win this position. After rook to h8, Niemann brilliantly played rook to c8, sacrificing the rook irresistibly because the black king is trapped. And look what happens now, because Mashira took Niemann, plays this fork, and after the move king to b8, you must be shouting, Raphael, it's over, just take the rook and win with the pawn. But no, Niemann played king to b6. As you must have seen, taking here is a serious mistake. It's a big mistake because after recapture, if you push, king to b7 comes and you lose. The pawn move is a blunder, a huge one. And if you play this, the position is a draw by stalemate. Look at that. The position would slip out of Niemann's hands, but not Niemann. Realizing that after the fork and king to b8, he plays this move here. The mate is inevitable. He'll checkmate with the pawn. The position is so beautiful, the whole play, that Mashira didn't resign. He let the mate happen. He played rook to c7, and Niemann checkmated with style on the board. Show the footage of the final seconds of this game. King to b8, rook to c7, and Mashira. Calculating there that he had no way out and allowing Hans Niemann to deliver checkmate on the board, Hans Niemann takes the lead in the American tournament. What a game, Rita. Live on air. The precision of this match, Hans playing like a brutal machine. Notice that Mashira executed a brilliant move. Knight takes f4. The position was confusing, but Niemann handled it well and found this brilliant move. It's something completely brutal. Results are in right now. 3 players are tied for the lead. The American Caruana, Wesley So, and Hans Niemann, all with 4 points. We're closely watching all aspects of Hans's Super Chess Tournament, he comments. If you're as impressed as I am, and if you like the analysis video, don't forget to like it and see you in the next videos.